Yep, Desiree, no breaks for today. We're ready to go. We're ready to talk about this game. What a performance from TSM Academy coming in here. Insane gaps in the top lane. We are going into this match again. Maybe TSM Academy are looking shakier. Maybe they won't be as dominant. That's exactly what we got. So I'm going to pass this one over to you first. Walk me through the TSM Academy side of things. And, what impressed you so far from this performance?
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about is we weren't sure which kind of side of the map they were going to play through, and they ended up playing through the top side, right? They ended up having Babip kind of path to the top side, Hanser crashed that wave, Babip invaded the Krugs. All of that was a good way to start. And then things got a little chaotic, and they got a little messy in that huge top lane skirmish. I think it was the right overall game plan for TSM. It turned out a bit of a weird way. It turned out positive in the end, but it was what I wanted to see from them with the champions they drafted. I think they were playing it the correct way. I just want to. I haven't had enough chances to look at the way that fight played out. We got it in the actual game, but I want to take a closer look at that because it was pretty influential in the game overall.
We do have a couple of replays that we can take a look at. Some of the key moments throughout that game. Let's take a look at that first one that you alluded to, though. That early scrap in the top lane. It was right around the 3-minute mark. This is where the game still seemed to be going either way, right? Like, it wasn't like TSM Academy got a big lead right there. There was also a trade kill on the bot side. But we'll walk through exactly what happened here. I'll give you this one.
There's so many things that happen during this play. So obviously Babip is in the area, he's doing the scuttle at this point, and we already see, if you look on the minimap while this play is going on, there's a TP from Syndra. Sword already recognizes, I'm not going to be able to walk here in time, I need to be able to get here. And Hanser does go down on the Ignite, but there are so many resources here that are blown from Winthrop, and TSM, they continue to play through it. They're saying, hey, we can win this, even without our top laner. This play even takes so long that Hanser's able to TP back in at the end of it alongside Camille, so a lot of resources invested, and I think this is the kind of TSM, if they're going to continue to play aggressive, that they're going to continue. They're just fully putting in as much resources into this top lane fight.
Yeah, when you've got the Syndra, I think that's a big part of it, and I was impressed that Sword was the one who recognized that more quickly and said, I got to go up there and help out with this. This is worthwhile investing the TP for, and that's a good champ to be skirmishing this early. And he blew up the first blood kill there. That was really good. It was a little strange to me that they'd go for a Hecarim gank there when they knew very clearly Babip was in the area. I guess they hoped they could get the Gnar kill before the collapse could come in, and that it would all be fine. So I don't have a huge issue with it. It was a little kind of off what I would expect. But the fact that TSM did manage to kind of clean that up and come out with the lead was a big deal. What was surprising to me a little bit was what happened the rest of kind of the early game. And I think we have a heat map of what Babip did with his pathing in the first 15 minutes. And if we look at that heat map, you can see a nice pocket of pressure around the enemy Krug camp, which is, I think, from that first initial invade that happened just before the clip we saw. But then most of the heat map is just farming his own camps. And I actually expected and I hoped that he'd be able to use kind of that advantage to spend more time in the enemy jungle after that and kind of extend the lead that he'd gotten. I think Babip played pretty decently this game, but I think there was an opportunity to press the advantage a little bit more and continue to play out not just the first clear path, but what he did the rest of the early game especially.
I think the big tell here is how little he spent bot side in the enemy jungle. Like, the top half of the map he was invading, right? You highlighted the Krugs, we see the heat map. He's spending a lot of time up there. He doesn't really prioritize the bottom half, and that's how that game played out. Hanser had a massive CS advantage, was always ahead, always had priority in the lane, and it was really, really hard for hybrids to actually deal with him there. Yes, we saw Winthrop get a couple early dragons, and then, try and get towards the dragon stack. We actually do have another replay towards one of these more mid-game dragon fights that happened, because eventually TSM started just grouping up, ramping up, and then winning around those fights. So actually we have the replay ready right now. Let's just take a look at it, because this is kind of how Winthrop's composition wants to play out. And Sam, I'm going to give this one back to you, because you're the one that particularly wanted to highlight kind of what Winthrop's trying to do here.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple levels to this. One is I think TSM got a little antsy. I don't think they needed to force this fight, but there were some really good ways that this fight got played out. I think Doxa had a really good Orianna ult that burned, the Xayah ult, and I believe it was the Zhonya's from Babip as well. And Winthrop could have piled in, and they did try to pile in on top of that with the rest of their engage tools to kind of get the secondary phase of that fight. But TSM's gold lead was a little too big, and it just wasn't quite enough. It was the right style of play for what I wanted Winthrop to do to try to win this game, and I think it was right for their comp. And some elements of it did work out well, but in the end, TSM, I think, just reacted well to that Orianna ult. they did the right thing, and then the follow-up wasn't quite clean enough from Winthrop. TSM managed to survive that fight. They put themselves in a bit of an awkward position, but it worked out okay, and they kind of continued to win from there.
I was going to say, this is basically what that gold lead affords you, right? Like, yes, it is a mistake, but because of the gold lead that they were able to generate from that top side that we saw from the heat map, it is just, those are the kind of camps that Lilia wants to clear, right? She wants those top lane camps where they're all AoE, they give her a bunch of gold, a bunch of experience, and then coming in, we saw from Hybrids and kind of where the wave state was, Hybrids was a little bit slow to rotate and try and get something because it was really hard for him to step up on the wave after a while against Gnar, and we just saw that gold lead from Hanser grow larger and larger, and that eventually just started to trickle down across the map. We saw Cody's son himself getting another gold lead for himself, another experience lead as well. It was incredibly tough, and gold leads like that are basically what allowed TSM to kind of bully Winthrop around the map and kind of push them where they want.
There were moments where it felt like Winthrop could have made a team fight happen, but they just, they didn't have the gold for it. The TSM Academy were just ahead throughout pretty much the entire game. And Tim, you also highlighted earlier just a play style change that you wanted to see from TSM Academy in particular. You wanted to see Fizzy engaging, looking for more aggressive plays, and we also have a replay of an example of this happening, because we got that this time. We got the Fizzy Alistair, and I think that he does look a lot better when he's on these engaged champs, and I'm happy that you brought that up to begin with.
Yeah, I was really happy to. This is the play where, yes, this is why you put Fizzy on Alistair, not on Braum. They're on the Baron. He comes out. They get the initial engage. Hanser goes in with the secondary part. This was a winning position from TSM in general, but you have to take that advantaged position and actually close out and confirm that Baron. So that engage from Fizzy and the follow-up from Hanser, that was the cleanliness of kind of pairing that together, and also the presence of Fizzy on the kind of champion who can do that. And that was like, yes, that's what I'm looking for from TSM. They actually did it. And I think that was, there are a couple different places you could say in this game was kind of a game-winning moment, but that one was, to me, kind of confirmed it.
Yeah, that was really the nail in the coffin right there. They also had Cody Sun playing the Zayas, so a more defensive AD carry that allows Fizzy to get out of lane, allows Fizzy to roam around. So I think the TSM Academy, they are going more towards that style, at least to start off this series. So let's think about them going into this next game and try and think into the future. Clearly their strategy worked this time around, but are there any weaknesses that they can shore up? Alk, based on your opinion, was that just through and through a clean game from TSM, or is there anything that they can still learn from that, still adapt throughout the series and look at for game number 2?
I'm really impressed with what we saw from Babip this game compared to what we've seen throughout UGP as a whole. There's obviously a lot of mistakes in terms of some small bunching and where they were positioning in certain of those fights. But for TSM, I think it is yet again just reining it in, making sure that we're cleaning up some of these edges, because this is the TSM Academy that I think can make a really deep run in a lot of Proving Grounds and a lot of Tier 1. We got to see really great play from Sword yet again on this Syndra, and he was playing really well alongside with his jungle and his top laner. And again, like Tim said, Fizzy on an engaged champion and Cody's son doing what he does best is, if we see that again, TSM are going to have a much more dominant game 2 than what we saw.
Yeah, I do want to call out that there were multiple cases where Cody's son used his Xayah ult perfectly to immune an Orianna ult, and used it exactly like he was 0-0-0 very far into this game, but he had a big CS lead despite his support getting 2v2 killed in lane, and he and Fizzy not being on the same page there, but he very much did his job. He reacted to the right things. He did kind of the controlled Cody's son play that we were looking for, and that was also very helpful for TSM.
And it worked so well with their style again because it allowed Babip to go for that top lane focus instead. That's TSM Academy. Now let's think about Winthrop. Let's think about it from their perspective. They're down in the series right now. This is not where they were last time around. This is the rematch. I was hoping at least for it to go to 3 games. I know I predicted TSM Academy 2-0, but my heart was telling me this is going the distance. So what does Winthrop need to do to turn it around? Tim, I'm going to give it to you this time around. Because again, there were semblances of them being on the same page, looking for those team fights. Their draft was kind of fun. So where did things really fall apart, and where can they fix it?
Yeah, I think I like the way they approached the game in general. I think ganking top early makes sense. I think throwing themselves bodily into these team fights makes sense. You want to introduce some randomness into the game in a sense. Like you want to, if you're the team that's coming in with a skill deficit, it's always been favorable to do something non-standard and try to get an advantage with the element of surprise or with, flipping some coins or things like that. I think they're doing the right things. It just didn't work out for them this time. I think they need to clean up, that top gank. I think there needs to be some cleaner kind of usage of wave crashes and the way you then, are you rotating out to get some forward vision or whatever and some more decisiveness there. I think they have the right style of comp. I'd maybe like to see a bit more of an early game focused jungler, especially if you're going to try to sell out with some ganks early on and kind of cut through your pathing and do that. So maybe the Hecarim is not quite right for that. Maybe a Jarvan or something like that can still kind of be part of that all-in the team fights, but has a little bit more ability to kind of really secure an early gank. But I think in general, they don't have to completely change their approach. It's not like, oh, this didn't work at all. This game was also, not a complete stomp or anything like that. So keep doing what you're doing. Try to execute a little bit cleaner, and it might work out this time.
And they did even try the J4 in their last series against TSM Academy, so they know that's in their wheelhouse. Well, we'll see what adaptations they make going into this next game. Will it be a quick 2-0 from TSM Academy, or will Winthrop bring us to a game number 3? The casters are ready to take us into game number 2. So, Deserix, Joshi, good luck.
We don't need luck, Kangas. We're good. All right, Winthrop TSMA game number 2. Yeah, we're hoping to see a lot of changes, Joshi, specifically for Winthrop, of course, because it felt like going for that early kind of game plan they wanted with Camille top was just read too easily. So it's something just needs to be completely revamped on that side of the map.
Yeah, I agree, and I liked what Tim was talking about. I'm not personally a fan of the Jarvan as a pick in general, but for the kind of things that they're trying to do, it does make a lot of sense, where they're looking for these early 2v2s and actually locking down these members before they really have a chance to get access to their ultimates. So Jarvan does fulfill that role rather effectively. The biggest thing that I want to continue seeing from Winthrop, though, is their ability to continue making some of these changes to their style. What they did here, they did almost exactly the same thing to C9 Speedo yesterday. So it's just a repeat of the playbook, and if you go with the exact same strategy over and over again, it's going to be a lot more difficult to take people by surprise. So I'm very excited to see what kind of adaptations they can make throughout this game, as we are going to be getting into the draft in just a second.
Yeah, TSMA versus Winthrop, and I'm wondering what the changes to draft are going to be. I already mentioned it on the Winthrop side, what I would like to see, but for TSMA, is there anything you're really expecting? I feel like the focus is still going to be towards those early game junglers to get those early game leads. They're still not going to care about the counter pick for Hanser because he seems that much better than hybrids. It's the best of what can come to mind, at least on the surface level for TSMA's draft.
Well, naturally, since we are going to be on opposite sides of the map this time, something that we haven't seen on the Academy stream in a little while, you're going to see a little bit of changes in the priority of how you're actually going to be picking. You can start looking at giving Sword a counter pick. You can start looking at doing the same thing for Hanser. And so we already see when Hanser has to have his blind pick, he's still able to find victories. But now as we move into the opposite side of the map, we'll see what it can be like when he gets to have the counter pick. And the Zoe getting banned away from Doxa and the Renekton getting banned away from Hanser are just kind of throwbacks to when we saw these guys play in the winner's side of the bracket.
One of the things that kind of surprised me is I'm waiting to see a little bit more of the Udyr or something like that. It's something that is in the wheelhouse of Above Bip. He loves playing it because it is that tempo style that he does in the early game, to be sticky, to be a menace, to get that early game control. Another ban that comes away will be the Taliyah. So, a lot of questions as to what Bob Bip could go. Udyr, Hecarim, Olaf, Nidalee, those are very prominent champions in his wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily so much like which one is the best for them, so much as just which one is strong. And this time we don't see a lot of jungle bans coming through, but notably, neither team has banned Seraphine. So we'll see if that's something that Winthrop can actually pick up this time, if that's something that they are willing to let Dox and Saskio or even Kenji play, because when I think of Seraphine, I don't really think of it as something that any of these guys are particularly prone to play, and instead, they're just looking at the Hecarim to lock it in once again. They are clearly showing a lot of priority for this champion, and it needs to have a larger impact this game than it had in the last game if they want to have a chance to take down TSM.
Yeah, Winthrop, no problem taking their jungler on the first pick, but the response from TSM Academy is going to be the interesting thing. I do expect top lane to be picked up. I've said it way too many times. Haunter in the mental, he loves to be on that top side, doesn't care about the counter pick, but something else pretty good picked up here is going to be the Kai'Sa. Cody's son, he does play almost like a KDA-esque style, but he actually gets kills rather than just defending his KDA. And Kai'Sa's great at pretty much being disorienting and stopping anyone from collapsing on her.
It also allows him to make some very aggressive plays, for better or for worse. And again, I feel like this draft is going kind of similarly to what we saw in Game 1. The Hecarim early pick, matched by the Lilia. Both these just seem to be the champions that they are preferring. And I'm expecting a Jinx to be picked up here for Winthrop. They've played it a lot with Kai'Sa already taken off the table, Jinx not banned. It's what Saskia has been playing, and it is a very strong champion, but it does mean that they have an opportunity to try and attack Saskia because it doesn't have the same kind of mobility or escapes on this side of the map, especially now that they are on blue side. They can get dove through the try, but Hybrids hovering this Gnar, a little bit surprising. Haunter does have a lot of scary counter picks that he can pick now before Winthrop have a chance to ban them out.
And Joshi, this is going to be the first time Haunter's actually picked second to his top lane counter opponent, so yeah, Gangplank locked in right away, and I remember the old TSM days with Haunter back when he was on the main roster. You could see some great things out of GP.
Yeah, this is a very interesting matchup, right? Because Mini Gnar doesn't have a lot of base health or base resistances, and every time you grasp the Undying poke with a Gangplank's Q, you're going to be taking a big chunk out of Hybrid's HP. That said, if Hybrids ever finds an opportunity to take some of these long trades, it's not the easiest thing for Haunter to get out of. He has to be very good with his second barrel placements as Hybrids does try and jump on him. But with all that picked up, we're going to start paying more attention to the mid lane. Syndra taken away from Doxa, Azir taken away from Sword, and this is going to be a little bit surprising because these have been the champion Sword has been playing a lot. We also see some Twisted Fate, we also see some Orianna in his champion pool recently, so I'm curious to see what he's going to go for. The Renekton is something he's also played. I don't expect him to have played it this game anyway, but does he now default to the Lucian at this point?
I have no idea. This is a lot of bans going towards the mid side. Even LeBlanc taken away, and if you haven't seen the LeBlanc lane that Doxa did, it was a thing of beauty. Some of the best escapes and some of the best cleanups I've ever seen. But yeah, still the mid lane focus is Orianna is now banned away. So this mid lane pool is really choked out. There's not too much left. Zoe comes to mind, so does Victor in this case.
Zoe is taken off the board here for TSM.
Completely missed her.
Yeah. I imagine you pick your support here. There's still a lot of things that are both in Kenji and Fizzy's champion pools. The Alistair, Leona, Nautilus all come to mind, but instead, they're not worried about giving over a counter pick. So Victor going to be grabbed up here for Sword, and that just means that Dox has an opportunity to pick what he wants in this situation. So we'll kind of see what it is that he likes to play into this, because Victor, very strong, doesn't have a lot of strong losing matchups early on, and with most of the things that we kind of know Doxa for playing in this position, there's nothing that's like really, really good against Victor. There's like Yone, there's Jace, there's Echo.
The pool's choked out now, Josh.
Yeah. Not stuff he's put the same number of games on in quite a while. He has actually played Yasuo, but I'm just looking for things that he's played up against the Victor, and there's really not a lot at this point. So I'm really curious to see how they're going to adapt, because the rest of the composition so far is pretty physically damage focused, and Yakali is going to be the answer. So Doxa is looking very confident at this point to be willing to pick this. This is not the kind of champion I was expecting to pull out this far into the draft, and he's going to have a really large performance. All of Winthrop are going to have to really overperform this game compared to how they had in Game 1, because they were losing in CS almost every single position throughout most of the game, and now they have these champions with really high skill ceilings where they can play really, really effectively, but the difference between them playing at their peak and them just playing okay is such a large difference in terms of their effectiveness.
And this was very, very targeted from TSMA. They really saved this mid lane pick and saved their mid lane ban, saved everything for the second half of the draft when it came to the mid lane. And they've just gone after Doxa. They're really closing out his champion pool. They know how much of a threat he is because he is hyped up so much on Winthrop, and they're just trying to basically neuter him as much as possible and make him a non-factor in this match by going after his champ pool before you even get into the Rift. So Akali, I feel like in this one, we're either going to see a situation where it's like a Doxa diff or a sword just annihilates him. Akali really does come down to almost feast or famine in some cases.
Yeah, I am asking a lot of questions, and Winthrop needs to show a lot of answers throughout this game. So I'm excited to see if they can stand up to it, because TSM Academy have a pretty standard composition. The one thing that they might be missing a little bit is easy access to Jinx. So I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to Saskio as well throughout these team fights, because if you're not presenting threats to Jinx, it means that Saskio can do a ton of damage to all of these relatively squishy members that TSM have picked for themselves. The biggest thing that they're going to be doing is looking at Haunter to really create big zones of control with his cannon barrage and his barrels, so that Saskio can't feel comfortable walking into these team fights. And it's going to be a very interesting game. I like the confidence coming out from Winthrop, but this is do or die. If they go home here, it means that they have to play in the next tier 1 in order to try to make it to the Proving Grounds tournament at the end of the split.
And to continue on about that a little bit more, really, like, Winthrop with their composition, I mean, we were looking at TSMA's a lot, but Winthrop with their composition, if they are able to get a kill in a team fight, if they are able to get some lead going for them in those fights, they have a very, very momentum-based composition. One kill can chain into many once they get going. That being said, though, it's very hard for them to get the initiation that they need to be able to lock down that kill, because there's so much that a Galio does for disrupting that front line and making it hard to get onto those carries.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, they have a lot of opportunities. Jinx loves being on a team that has some burst so that she can get people low and reset off of them. So I think this game is, if it was played at the highest level, very, very close. But I'm not sure we're quite there yet. They've already impressed us, right? Winthrop as a team is not a team that we were even looking at being necessarily at the top of collegiate. We were looking at teams like Maryville to do that. But Winthrop is currently farther in the tournament than Maryville has. They are currently farther than teams like Barrage that we were looking at as being these massive powerhouses from the amateur scene coming through. And now they are competing with teams like No Org, Solafide, Zeus Gaming, TSM Academy, and CLG Academy, right? These are not names that we were necessarily expecting these guys to have to play against. And with their rematch going up against TSM Academy right now that they already lost, the fact that they're able to even be in the conversation is a massive improvement from what we were expecting before this season of Proving Grounds.
Yeah, it's an absolutely massive morale boost on top of that. I mean, when you're not even put into the top 4 picture, never mind the top 6 picture, what you're in right now, it feels so good to be able to shut up all these other teams, all these other analysts who doubted you. The thing is, right now, the odds are against them. The analysts do say TSMA is going to win, and TSMA are coming with a performance like they have something to prove, because they do. Again, this is the first seed. This is the 6th place team in the Academy season. They have a lot that they need to bring in these next couple of matches to prove that Academy is what it is.
See if they can do that. We're seeing a difference in style already coming out from the blue side of the map. Frost Forest not starting on the bottom side to go for a 3-minute gank towards the top half. He's going to be starting on the top, but he does have a ward in the river that he does need to be a little bit careful about. He's not going to necessarily have an easy time just going buff to buff, but another level 1 fight does get some damage down onto both Fizzy and Kenji, but I'm kind of surprised at how willing they are to take these fights.
Yeah, Kenji always goes for a hook very, very early on. And what I kind of see from him is he hops out of the bush, hooks, and then runs back into the bush after he gets his auto route. Regardless of the champion he's on, he's just looking for some cheeky advantage. And, you know, when you're thirsty and you're an amateur player and you want to break into the academy scene, you want to break into the pro scene, you'll see that often from players. They just go for things that are a bit unorthodox because those higher end players just never experienced it before. They don't really know what it is. They don't really know how to play against it.
Yeah. So far, Haunter doing a good job building advantages top lane. Sora doing a similar thing in the mid lane. So Frost Forest not going to have a lot of priority to play with on the top half in order to try and play for one of these scuttles. But on the bottom half, he does have Kenji and Sasuke pushing this wave underneath the turret, so he will be able to pick up one of the Scuttle Crabs if he wants to go for it. And going to be spending a little bit of time hovering into the river as well, so not going to be quite at the same speed of clearing out on the bottom side, and Babip will be about half a camp ahead of him for the rest of this player.
This is kind of the scary part, is how much harassment Hybrids is taking, because Babip is not shy to go for a tower dive very early on, and Hanser isn't either. These guys play, you were talking about it before this match even started up, with the biggest ego possible. And already Babip going over towards that Scuttle Crab, going to be able to clear that out, and Hybrids just keeps getting lower and lower with those Gangplank Qs.
Yeah, it's tough. It's kind of what you expect, but now Babip is going to be clearing out the top side of the map, and he keeps himself a decent amount of movement speed, and he's going to actually be stopping Hybrids back. Wow. He's so low, they should be able to get this dive.
Oh, that feels so bad if you're Hybrids. Another hook towards the bot side for the harassment, but the attention is towards his top side. Hybrids cannot get his recall off. He is absolutely stranded, and no one can save him. No one can protect him. Here comes the dive, and it's an easy first blood for TSM Academy.
Man, Babip, his movement around the map so far has been looking so good in both last game and this game. He was able to spot out the early aggression from Frost Force in the previous game, and this time just using the bit of vision provided by the planets to spot out Hybrids, keep him around, notice that he's so low, and force him to stay underneath the turret for the dive. It's a brutal situation, and Hybrids unfortunately ends up going down relatively early in this matchup that is supposed to get better for Nara in the near future, but being forced to buy a second Doran's item, whereas Hancher's going to come back to lane probably with a Sheen at the very least, just means Hybrids is going to be suffering for a little while longer.
It's going to be a rough match for Hybrids in this top side, and brilliant pathing to come out of the bit early. Taking a look at where Frost has been on this map, it's just been clear, 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 camp, camp, camp. They're playing it very carefully, and it's almost a little bit standard for Frost. He tends to have a safer early game before he just goes hard at the later half of the early game. You might need to turn on a little bit earlier because you're going to need some strong neutral objective control if you're going to be able to compete with the pacing of Babip.
Yeah, ooh, look at the damage that's already coming through from Hanser with this Sheen. We're seeing that Doxa is doing okay in terms of his itemization. In terms of his CSing. He hasn't yet bought anything, right? But Frost Forest, he's even in CS up against Babip, and now they might be finding Fizzy. This is an interesting read.
Oh, an interesting path, and you find the hook. Not going to allow the Justice Punch. Busy forced to bird his flash to stay alive. Teleport will be used from Doxa all meanwhile, but interesting read coming out of that play, and a great hook to come out of Kenji.
Yeah, it's not the kind of thing I was necessarily expecting, but it is going to get them the flash out of Fizzy, and this might be enough as they already have the push going in the bottom lane to reward them with the Ocean Dragon. But hey, that means if you have a lot of members on the bottom side, TSM is able to play up on the top side. Blue buff is coming up in no moment, and of course, Hybrids is at risk potentially just being dove again because he doesn't have a lot of base stats if Babip wants to come up.
And there's that sound. Knowing the Drake has been killed, there is the pings going over towards the top side. Curious if Babip's going to start pathing over there. You can still see Kenji shooting out those hooks. Doesn't really care. Just shoot hook after hook after hook. Once it comes off cooldown, let's throw another one. But the pressure on the top side is where our attention is because Babip is looking for that dive.
He's got a bar.
Meganar form is here. So he might be able to defend himself. There is no teleport from Doxa, so Doxa can't do anything for that top side. And I think the Meganar was enough right there. Babip's going to retreat.
Yeah, but I don't think he necessarily needs to leave. He can choose to stick around and potentially play for this blue buff because Hanser is just going to push once again, and Frost Forest hasn't yet shown elsewhere on the map, but as the blue buff respawns, it should be something that Babip should be able to pick up for himself, and you're starting to see Hybrids, because he hasn't seen Babip show up on the map again, isn't really able to play for this wave. He has to be very, very careful, and as Babip takes away 2 camps, Frost Forest going to show up a little bit late, and ooh, oh, he does get the blue!
Frost able to get his blue back from the grasp of Babip. I thought it was going to be one of those feel-bad moments where you walk up and just see your blue get taken. And like, drats, if I was just a second earlier, well, Frost was exactly on time to be able to claim it.
Yeah. All right, well, that cleans up a little bit, but we still have to note the fact that this top lane going fairly similarly to how it's been before in Frost Forest. They know exactly where he is. They know he's going to be clearing top to bottom, which gives BABIP the freedom to choose how he wants to play. But he's going to get spotted out relatively soon as he goes for his own blue buff, and both junglers actually have a lot of information that they've been able to play with this game. They've had a pretty good idea of where the opposite jungler is, and so far, BABIP had an early advantage. Now he's going to be clearing out a lot of this side of the map, and because they spotted out BABIP on the bottom side, Frost Forest isn't clearing. He's here to fight.
Ooh, Dox is here as well. Over towards the control ward. Just clear it out and get control over this blue side.
Cannon Barrage.
Frost wants to find the double. Mega Gnar's coming up over towards the top side. Cannon Barrage used for the wave clear. Potential team fight just waiting to break out over in this bot side. Genji takes a lot of punishment, but not enough. BABIP comes in and steals back his blue buff. The damage is on to Frost, who's barely able to stay alive, but yeah, the invasion, it just didn't work. The blue gets stolen back, blue for blue.
Yeah, a lot of commotion for what ends up just being the normal people taking a lot of these camps, but on the opposite side of the map, Hybrids had to blow Flash. Now going with the Hearthbound Axe, he will, have the old Phage passive. He will be a little bit faster, but no base movement speed means he does have a little bit of difficulties avoiding a lot of the upcoming barrels. And in the mid lane, I'm actually rather pleased with Doxa. He's doing rather well in terms of the CS department. We're going to start seeing a lot more fighting in the very near future. We're seeing a kind of similar early game to what we saw in the first game. Even though it's not as bloody, the results are similar, right? TSM have a small gold lead currently concentrated up in the top lane, and we're going to see that continue to build up as the entire Essence Reaver already completed for Hanser. These queues are going to be relentless as we see a fight at the bottom.
Ooh, a lot of damage in the bottom lane, trying to take down Fizzy. Not gonna find it just yet. That was with Super Mega Death Rocket being used, but Sasuke is finding a strong lead over there. Meanwhile, over on the top side, put to sleep is Frost and sent back to the Reson. Also Frost. Rift Herald will go the way of TSMA.
Yeah, so that ends up coming out. The Rift Herald is going to be nice, and I imagine they're probably going to draw up at top lane, considering there's already been 2 plates picked up by Hanser, and now with the red buff, it's going to be even more brutal every time he presses Q onto Gnar. But the opposite side of the map, even though they haven't picked up a kill, there's also a small advantage going in favor of Winthrop in terms of CS and turret plates that they picked up. So looking kind of similar to Game 1 and Hybrids, going to have to give up this position. This turret should be the first thing to fall on the map in favor of TSM Academy.
This top lane is looking like the Marianas Trench when it comes to just how big this gap really is. Hanser is styling on this top side. We're only 10 minutes in first brick, and he made it look so easy with just a little bit of assistance coming out from BABIP, and the push just continues to go over towards this top side for Hanser.
He's 2,000 gold above the next highest person on the map, right? Like, that's actually crazy. Hanser is so accelerated in this game, and he doesn't really have anybody who's going to be able to contest him. Hybrids just trying to survive in a lot of these situations. I don't know if Hanser can make that dive. Hybrids is fairly mobile on this Gnar, but, like, just being able to have this much pressure before the next dragon spawns, oh boy, this barrel...
Hybrids not like this.
That's what I was afraid of. Oh. No. I was just gonna say, like, Hybrids can back away. He'll be in a spot where he can help the rest of his team contest for this dragon. But now he's not going to be up in time for when it spawns. It's already spawned. Hanser is gonna have his teleport, and suddenly, not only are TSM winning on the top side, but he can start moving around the rest of the map. A good hook from Kenji.
Trying to find the taunt back. Onto Frost. Frost.
They don't have friends. Where's their
wants to
friends?
back off. He doesn't want to fight this one. Onslaught of Shadows used right through the cannon barrage, but over the wall comes Cody-san. Cody-san gets the hero's entrance, though, so he feels quite safe having a support there, and safety can't be assured for Winthrop as they're losing 2 members. It's going to be Saskio and Frostforce, both fallen victim to TSM Academy.
They didn't have any friends. There's just the 2 of them. There were 4 members of TSM there, and you saw both Akali and Sasuke walking over. Gonna get there too late. Dragons are equalized, and now Winthrop doesn't really have any real advantages on the map to play through, and it's going to be on TSM to make mistakes for Winthrop to really have an opportunity to come back into this game. If it goes really late, You do have a late game Jinx that you can fall back on, but it's going to take a long time for them to really get for that. And as we jump into this replay, notice how far away Doxa and Saskia are going to be from this actual fight.
You see it start up there with the hook, but it's just two lonely buddies in the forest together, Josh. There's not much they can do.
Yeah, Sword's here first. They almost get out, but Cody's son coming over the wall gets a little bit of damage down. Sword smartly over the Dragon Pit is going to allow them to find even more. And because of how separated this team was, they're not really finding anything. They don't even have the advantage in the bottom lane. They are getting a lot of plate gold, but so far they're not really finding anything that they can call an advantage they can play through. They're not winning the arms race in any position on the map, and I'm starting to look at TSM Academy very likely to make it to the next phase of Proving Grounds.
And a lot of this was just off that early draft. I mean, Doxa can't really have an impact at this early stage of the game. He was forced on something he hasn't really played in this tournament. And it's now a stranglehold. Haunter got a counterpick. We've never seen that. Now we see what happens when he's able to find a counterpick, because he's destroying hybrids. Over in the bot lane, even though Saskia is able to stay tit for tat with Cody's son and CS, it's falling apart when you get Saskia going down early and they're still unable to get that first brick. Frost just hasn't been able to make an impact, and that's what he's trying to do now over towards the spot side, but they just cannot find their way in, and Bob Bip is going to rotate down to respond to a 3v3. Frost using the Ghost. Here we go. The charge
Teleport
onto Bob Bip. Kenji's trying to get
Double
closer. Teleport comes
Triple
out.
teleport.
Going both
Quadruple.
ways. Teleports all over the map. Here comes the Super Mega Death Rocket as Saskia will get excited, but gets haunted up, returns fire. Doxa grabs one kill. It's going to be another going down. 3 picked up by Winthrop, and somehow, some way, after a disastrous early game, Winthrop are able to get 3 uncontested.
Wow, I was not expecting them to find much of anything through this whole thing, but it erupts with every single person showing up for the fight, and now we're going to see if they actually have any play to them. They're still down 3,500 gold. They don't have any major points of pressure that they can play to, but if TSM aren't able to coordinate these fights, it's not going to matter if they don't have a massive gold lead. And we end up seeing Frost Force coming down here. Both these junglers have a pretty good idea where the other one is, but Frost Force is just able to get a lot of damage down at the very beginning, and because of how split the fight is, there's not a real way for them to draw the battle lines, and we see a similar effect to what we saw previously. Because these members weren't able to participate, Haunter and Cody's son, very strong, not able to have an opportunity to do DPS during this whole thing, not going to be able to get into the fight. Suddenly, Winthrop is able to find some of these advantages because they aren't playing the same orthodox style that most League of Legends team are known to play.
My goodness, and the responses come out so fast from TSMA. You see all those teleports burnt, so much TP that you think we're at the start of COVID-19 instead of being in the middle of it. It's some aggressive, calculated play from TSMA, and I got to commend them for that when it comes to macro.
I was not ready for that one, Eric. That's a pretty good one. I'll have to see if I can integrate that one later on. But it is still important to recognize how far ahead TSM are, and they find another pick.
Oh, another one gonna be grabbed into the pocket of Winthrop. Kill number 4 and 1 kill away from evening it up, but you still got a long way to climb if you're gonna match the gold.
Yeah, they stayed in that bush for so long, too. They were just waiting for somebody to come through, and it gives them a little bit of an advantage, but now they're starting to put Haunter up against Doxa, who, you know, he's not necessarily the strongest member of the Winthrop position, but he is relatively strong, and Haunter shouldn't be losing any of these 1v1 interactions, and it will give players like Sword an opportunity to roam around the map. But another neutral objective going in favor of Winthrop, and we'll see what they can do with it, because they do have opportunities to continue funneling turret gold into Jinx. They do have an opportunity to bring this top lane relatively quickly, and if they are effective with it, they might even be able to do it before the dragon.
It's going to be pretty quick, though, because 25 seconds until said dragon hits the map, and Dox is going to take his reset, but Frost is going to stay towards this top side. Wonder if they're not even going to go for the dragon play. They just want to go for this dive, perhaps, but
yeah,
it will be enough to bully them away. Forgot they just grabbed Shelly, so that's going to be the play right there. Be able to get that brick and match it over in the bottom lane.
Yeah, I mean, they are making a gold play. I do like this. Again, you don't need to watch your opponents do the dragon. They do find a little bit of an advantage, and now it looks like they're going to be trading 2 turrets for a turret and the dragon. Haunter is strong, but he shouldn't be strong enough to take this entire turret at this point. And a potential dive, they're going to come through, dissuaded by the cannon barrage. So good usage of the ultimate from Haunter to make sure that the rest of his team can't be dove at this point.
I mean, once the Rift Herald was taken, Babip knew the play, go straight for Dragon, and one of the utility resources you have is Cannon Barrage. Works well for teamfight. What else does it work well for? The wave clears, so it stops Winthrop from being able to get a second tower and finding more impact than they did than just grabbing that first one earlier, and still keeps TSMA in a good spot.
Yeah. But the gold lead is a little bit smaller, right? Like, this is one of the things I have been praising Winthrop for. They are not necessarily just going with the standard things and what you would expect teams to try and do over and over again. They are making plays around the map where it's like, well, we can't do that, so what can we do? Let's try and do this instead. And, you know, it's narrowing the gold lead. They are still behind, but they will have some avenues, right? It buys them time. They still have a Jinx on their team that is going to be really important to the game later on. He has a Gale Force. He's a little bit more mobile now. He can try and dodge out from the barrels from Haunter. He can try and get out of the AoE damage that Sword is going to be putting down. So they have a narrow win condition that they can play to now. They have a strong member, and as long as Frost Forest Hybrids and Dockside are able to create space for Saskio, they have ways to play, which was not true even just a couple minutes ago.
I'm curious to see the gold difference between the players right now, because I want to see how much of that gold is actually allocated more specifically to Haunter in this gold lead. But take a moment to think about that, because a little bit of a fight breaks out. We're good now, and yeah, a lot of it towards Haunter. But if you're looking at the lane matchups, it's not that far different everywhere else.
True, yeah. You notice that the gold lead between Haunter and Hybrids is actually larger than the entire gold lead that TSM currently have over Winthrop. And that just means that if you can keep Haunter off in a side lane, if Hybrids can just be annoying and prevent Haunter from participating in these fights, that might be enough. So I would be pretty excited to see if Hybrids opted to play to the split push to build items that will allow him to 1v1 or threaten these structures so they have to respond to it. They just go. I don't know if they can do this.
Here comes the threat right now, looking for the tower dive. Turret's starting to get low. Kenji will fall. It's gonna be a tower for a kill. 2 kills now as Frost is gonna fall. Hybrids forced to retreat. Tough trade going on there, especially considering Baron's gonna be on the map quite soon.
Yeah, I was very surprised that they went for that. It is the kind of thing where the risk tolerance of a team as you start falling behind becomes smaller, right? You are more willing to take these big risks. You're more willing to go for these big fights that aren't obvious whether or not they're going to work out. And as we jump into the replay, we'll see what they were thinking and why it didn't actually work out for them, right? They're looking at this mid lane and they don't see anybody. They don't know if they're there. They don't know that they might not be there, but they only see one person when Kenji throws out the ultimate. They think if people are coming, it's going to take them too long to arrive. Unfortunately, they were wrong, right? It was a risk that they chose to take, and this time it's just going to be giving, you know, it's not a super obvious lead to TSM, but because they're concentrating the gold on individual members rather than sharing it across the entire team, as in the case of the turret, they get to allocate it more effectively. And so the members that they want to be strong will have a little bit more gold, whereas all of Winthrop going to be rather even in the recipients of what they pick up.
And that was fast though, Josh. That was really fast. It went from a 1 versus 3 to a 4 versus 3 within a single second, within a heartbeat even.
Yeah.
And now the question is, like, where do Winthrop start to look to find their advantage? They do have a lot of vision over towards this Baron side. It's the Hex Flash over the wall. There is no Dragon for another minute, but it also kind of looks like Winthrop are not really too into the Dragon win condition this time. They're just looking for gold as a whole as the Cannon Barrage goes out, looking to find the engagement. Kenji trying to back off, will get slept. It's 3 slept. Onslaught of Shadows into the backline, and TSM Academy are taking the engage. Haunter's taking names, and it's 3 dropped for absolutely nothing. TSMA, they're setting their sights on Baron.
Well, there's the answer for how TSM want to play. They just want to take fights whenever somebody from Winthrop isn't there. Doxa was down on the bottom side and had to teleport, and this should be able to get them the Baron. Frost Forest isn't alive to try and make a steal. Doxa would have to do something miraculous, but hey, we got Saskio with a Jinx Rocket. It's a bit too late. He hasn't shot it just quite yet. It won't be there in time, but we've seen more miraculous things from Winthrop, but this is unlikely to be one of them. The members of TSM are going to be getting to this dragon first, and as Infernal Soul Point is looming, I don't think TSM are going to be in a spot where they can lose almost any fight, because almost every fight they take should be winning.
And still more and more money in the pocket of Hanser, too. Look at that 603 in KDA. He has been popping off, and the biggest thing hasn't even been those solo kills. It's been his cannon barrages and how much it just stifles Winthrop from going through on their engagements.
Yeah, you saw Saskio. He was hit by the cannon barrage, and then he was hit by the sleep coming in from Babip, so he didn't really get to have any kind of DPS. He needs to be a bit more careful in his positioning in order to avoid that quality crowd control that Babip is able to provide. And if he can do that, and if he can DPS through that, maybe they have some outside chance in order to try and take these. But I'm rather surprised that TSM are going to be giving over this objective. I don't think they need to, but I also don't think it's important that they end up picking it up. Instead, they just get the inside track towards the mid lane. They can start threatening these objectives on the side of Winthrop. And Winthrop are going to be the ones who are forced to respond because they can't really try and split anywhere.
Now, TSMA on this siege in the mid lane. Just looking to get some harassment. Hook goes out. Kenji will not find it. Clearing out the wave. Baron Empowered played not too strong right now. Has netted them a good 1,600 gold. And they're looking to expand that and try and find more. Hanser over towards that top side. Left to wail away on that tower all by his lonesome. Will collect that gold all by his lonesome. And here comes the engagement. Hero's entrance goes through. Frost tries to find it, but he is going to fall all too early. There is the sleep, and there is the pain of taking that Akali. But there's the pain that the Akali can bring. Almost found, but Cody's son will find the kill first. That's 3 down and a triple kill going over to Cody's son. Here comes the march into the base.
The difference between a good engage and a small engage in League of Legends is so small. Saskio, if he had gotten a reset off of any of these members, could have potentially turned that fight around, but they weren't able to do it. Frost Force was a little bit too far forward, and Saskio had to Gale Force and flash into the fight. And you see, he did the most damage there, but not being able to find a kill, not being able to find a reset, just means that TSM now at a 10,000 gold lead, open up the base of Winthrop, and it's tough. Winthrop had a decent series against them previously, but the difference has been staggering. Hanser 6-0-3, 3 completed items at only 25 minutes.
It's been enormous for Winthrop to be able to have to deal with the raw gold lead that TSM have. As we take a look at that last team fight, how it started off, it looked good for a second, but then you realize Kloppany's all by himself.
Yeah, it just kind of goes back in, right? Saskio flashes forward. They're not really able to do a whole lot. And if he's able to find a reset, maybe. But they're trying to find these crazy fights wherever they can.
Hanser able to grab the jungler. Super Mega Death Rocket goes out and finds its mark onto Fizzy. Now Sword on the run. Zap will not be able to find him, but Doxa jumps over the wall to get the DPS in. Here comes the hook. Kenji finds the knock-up. Hanser starting to run low. Doxa waiting for those cooldowns to come back as Saskio attacking Babip on the side. All meanwhile, here comes Cody's son. Cody's son versus Saskio. Cody's son is able to get the quadra kill before he goes down. TSMA, they survive by the skin of it, but ultimately they get the ace.
Yeah, those are some big shutdowns going in favor of Winthrop, though, but the end result is because they lose out on kills, they're losing out on pressure. They're going to be losing more objectives on the map. Hanser down here in the bottom lane. Babip wasn't really able to participate either in the DPS check. You saw it's just going in favor of the AD carry with more items at this point. So you get to see how this fight gets into the latter parts of it, right? Kenji shows up and woo! Zoom.
Gotta go fast.
Or stop.
Or not.
And on this blessed day, we are all Echo.
Get to the replay.
There we go. All right, we finally get to see it. Echo stopped screwing around, and we get to see that they find a pick while Hanser is getting a 1v1 off on the side. And again, it's all about how many friends you have, Eric. The more friends you have, the better League of Legends becomes, because they're able to come help you out in these fights. And Saskio, he's getting some good DPS down at this point, right? But we get to see shades of what this game might look like later on.
And Cody's son just completely flipped your words there. He doesn't need any friends. He's willing to jump in 1v3.
Yeah. So, I don't know, Eric. I think it's about all said and done.
I mean, look at how the gold has transferred now, too, Josh. Before, we were just talking about it's all on Hanser. Look at Cody's son's KDA.
10, 1, and 2. And he's got a collector. So every single time he gets one of these kills, he gets that little bit of extra gold. He gets to sleep on his Saskio.
Ooh, trying to find Saskio. Zap goes out. Saskio is able to flash out and get far enough away to not get caught, but that's not the objective there. The tower was, and TSMA will take it quite quickly.
Look at the TP. Doxa's at the red buff.
He's taking the scenic route to mid lane, Josh. What do you mean?
That's an expensive summoner spell to use right here. I don't know. This seems like a bit of miscommunication coming out from the side of Winthrop, but they have to try and make like crazy plays. They have to show the unorthodoxness that they have found some of their advantages previously, but now with only 10 seconds left on the dragon, I don't even know if they want to fight for this one, right? Like,
oh my God, Hanser's damage! In the blink of an eye, Frost is completely out of this contention.
well, they have had this thing answered for them. Their Jinx Rocket comes through a little bit too early, and Frost Forest can't get into the fight. Unfortunately, they've been struggling a lot to find these significant engages during this game, and the Hecarim just losing out too much early to things like the Lilia to have the kind of impact on the game that they wanted to have. And now as the Baron comes through, Jinx Rocket isn't there. This has been their best smiting tool for the past couple of days. Frost Forest can try and get there. He's fast, but they are doing so much damage to this objective, he won't get there in time.
It looks like it might be the last stand. You can see right now, Hybrids is posturing up. He's looking to go for this, and here comes the Onslaught of Shadows. Onto the backline, you find the zap onto Sword, but Hero's entrance buys enough zone control. Kenji able to grab one. The fight's still continuing. No one's to go down just yet, but Fizzy will be the first one to fall. Now the health bar's deleted of Winthrop. TSMA take it to the face of Winthrop and drop them straight to the ground. This is the 6th team to come out of Academy. This is the first seed in this tournament, and they just pressed that gas pedal so hard they went straight through the floor, Josh. Here comes TSMA, as they will be the 3rd team to qualify for the Proving Ground Spring.
Yeah, they have finally shown us that they can play this very clean League of Legends. They want to get their spots back in LCS. They want to have an opportunity to play with the best that North America has to offer. And right now, a lot of their members are proving it. Gotta highlight Hanser so much throughout this series, because while we've seen Hybrids do some fantastic things in the amateur scene, he still needs to find some way to go toe-to-toe with somebody who has gone to Worlds at this point. And I can't wait to see what TSM Academy are going to be able to do, because it was not the easiest route to get here. They had to take down Winthrop twice at this point. They end up losing to Solafide, but now as they are in the top 4 here in the Unified Grand Prix, they will be going to the Proving Grounds at the end of the season. They will have an opportunity to play against all the other Academy teams once again.
And it is exactly what we needed from TSMA after, especially after seeing that game number 1. Winthrop was there. Winthrop was there in game 1, but in game number 2, it was just control, control, control. You saw some light in the eyes of Winthrop, but TSMA would not let them even get a foot in. After that, Hanser collects all the gold, and it finally gets transferred to Cody's son. Cody's son goes buck wild, man. Did you see those killer instincts? Did you see the 1v3? Caution to the wind, doesn't even care about his life, but there's a reason why this guy has KDAs as good as they are in the UGP.
Yeah, it's been really impressive to see how they were playing. And, you know, when we were watching TSM play yesterday up against Solafide, we were looking at a lot of these really long games where Sword, with so much of this playmaking power, ends up going for some really big plays, but I'm honestly kind of surprised. He was kind of quiet today. He wasn't necessarily going for these big opportunities to win. He was very confident that his side lanes were going to be strong enough to actually do the DPS, to actually be relevant the entire period of the game, and they were able to do just that. And I feel like so much of what we've been looking at from Winthrop, where it's been a Doxa diff for so many games and so many series at this point, not gonna quite come out on top. But even today, in the Akali versus Victor, he was looking good against one of the people that were kind of being lauded as upcoming North American talent. So I have to say that the talent pool goes deeper than a lot of people were necessarily giving it credit for before we had the 2021 season.
And looking on the other side of the rift with Winthrop and their unfortunate defeat, ultimately they had a great performance in this tournament. There's nothing they should be ashamed about. They were the underdogs. They were a team that a lot of people wrote off, and for them to get this far, to place into the top 6, is already outstanding. I mean, there's a lot of scouts watching. Doxa, I'm sure, has impressed a lot of them with his performance, and I think you could pat yourself on the back at the end of this entire tournament. Get ready for the next one, but go up with your head held high at the end of the day.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how some of these teams are going to be playing. And we do have a big reminder, right? Our 2nd and 3rd seeds for the Unified Grand Prix in No Org and CLG Academy are going to be playing coming up fairly soon, right? These guys will have another opportunity to try and find that 4th spot into Proving Grounds at the end. And I think this might be one of the closest series that we've seen so far. We've seen CLG Academy play up against Zeus Gaming, who were able to take CLG down 2-1, as well as their former sister team No Org 2-1. And that just means that these two teams that were, again, our 2nd and 3rd seeds going to be clashing just to make it into the top 4 for this tournament.
Oh, we have an exciting finals, both on the winner side and the loser side, once we are able to get that result. And, well, teams are bringing it. This is NA Amateur, this is Academy, and this is the type of matchups we've been just dying to see for the longest times. Academy players trying their darndest against amateur players who are trying their darndest against collegiate players. We're bringing it all together, and it's just been a fine time. At the end of the day, though, TSMA are the Academy team that are going to be successful today. A great performance out of them, and we have to throw it over to an interview with one of the studs of that last game. Kangas, take it away. We're throwing it over to an interview with Hanser.
Congratulations, Hanser, making quick work of your opponents, being the 3rd team to qualify for the Proving Ground circuit and the 1st of the Academy rosters. What are your thoughts on the competition so far? Being the 1st Academy team to make it in, what's it like playing with some of these amateur and collegiate teams?
They're not bad, yeah. They're pretty good. I think for us, we definitely had trouble finding our style, but I think we found it today. We didn't really play to our strengths yesterday, and I think we had a pretty tough match, but still props to the enemy. Like Solo Fide, they played pretty well in team fights. Even Winthrop yesterday in game 1, they beat us, and they had like a pretty good showing. So I definitely think that the competition is pretty good.
Yeah, it's fun to see, especially a player like yourself going up against some of these guys, because, I mean, we can say that they look pretty good, but then when they're up in lane against you, suddenly it's not looking as hot. So what was the rematch like against Winthrop right there? Because this was a very different series today than we saw earlier in the week. What was your prep like? What were you thinking going into this one?
Well, after yesterday we played tank v tank matchups top, and I didn't feel like I could use my strengths as a player or our strengths as a team to the best of his abilities. So we decided, just pick like counter pick top or pick strong matchups top and just snowball through top, and that's what we did today.
Yeah, it definitely worked out for you. It was awesome to see you on carries instead of those tanks. Now, zooming out again to this whole Academy teams coming into the amateur circuit and getting some more cross-play, what are your thoughts on this system overall? You're a player that's been around in the LCS for a long time, still competing now in the Academy scene. Just kind of what your thoughts are on this new system, right? Trying out some new things, getting some more cross-play, almost kind of like the old challenger scene where they get to, go up through relegations and get some opportunities to play. Do you think this is good for the scene? What's your opinion of this?
I think it's fun. I love playing tournaments. Best of series has always been something I really enjoyed. I I think it brings out the best competition, the best games, the best like matches, and so I haven't played Academy before this, so I don't really know what it was like before, but right now I'm really enjoying the fact that we can play tournaments. There's way more competition and way more fun.
Yeah, more best of series across the board I think is just good for the region as a whole, right? Like getting out of those best of ones. We've played enough of those. Let's get some more experience, especially with some of these younger guys coming in. Now, this is, again, third team qualifying for the Proving Ground circuit. You already mentioned a little bit about Solo Fide. What are your thoughts on Zeus Gaming? Because they also are one that's coming a little bit out of left field here, having a couple upsets under their belt. Do you have any opinions about them as a team, as like the kind of the two that qualified before you? No offense, but they did make it in a little faster. So do you have any thoughts on Zeus?
I have no clue what their roster is, so I'll have to wait and see when we actually play them. But right now, I don't even know who's on the roster.
All right, fair enough. I should have prepped you for that question ahead of time. Sorry for putting you on the spot there, Hanser. But I am going to put you on the spot again because I'm not going to lie, I have been waiting to do this for quite a while. I know that you are a fellow gym brother. And I just got to say, the analysts bet I wouldn't do it. We got to get a flex off in the chat right now. What, are you wearing a t-shirt right now? What you got, man?
Hold up.
You got to sit up a little bit more. Yep. All
Let's
right.
bring it down a little bit,
Okay.
Gotta,
I was pumping like 5 minutes before this interview, so I cheated a little bit.
You got a head start, bro. I got to do some push-ups first, but we rocking out here. Hello.
All right, there we go.
Hey, let's go.
Nice. Thank you for doing that with me. That's
No
been
problem.
a lifelong dream of mine, so I appreciate it. Congratulations, Hanser, on making it into the Proving Ground circuit,
Thank you.
and for coming in on this interview. We're going to send it back over to us at the analyst desk to break down what happened in that game. Have a good one, Hanser. All right, and now I'm in the correct Discord room again. There we go. What a guy, Hanser, everybody. Yeah, Alec, you want to give a quick flex off again? I don't have the right screen.
No,
right
Alec and I were saying you couldn't see for us because of our shirts. So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, otherwise it would take up too much screen real estate, right? It'd be too hard.
Yeah.
Let's break down what exactly happened in that game. This was a quick 2-0 series. Tim, we had our predictions right, so congratulations on that one. But thoughts at the end of the day. Tim, I'll throw it to you first.
I think Hanser kind of just showed us on screen what happened in that game, right? Like he flexed his biceps and there it went. No, I mean he got control of the lane really early on. Bobip showed up and used it, and they dove, snowballed it really hard, and that was the main story of the game. And some hiccups along the way, but Hanser really just rode that through and showed. I think he had some games so far in this tournament where it seemed like he was trying to do too much. He's trying to style on people, or he's trying to like force things that didn't need to be forced. In this game, he showed up and actually played, and actually did succeed in styling on the amateur scene a little bit. So good for him. I hope that it's a good learning experience for hybrids, and he can not get tilted from it too much. But Hanser was a beast this game.
Tough to go up against Hanser in this high pressure situation, right?
I was gonna say it's pretty tough to go up against some people who have gone to Worlds, right? It's all that experience. I will say that for TSM, I love that it feels like there was a lot more of a cohesive idea of what they wanted to do inside of the game. So Babip, I think, actually came up pretty huge. We saw those Lilia engages were on point, at least this time, and I'm excited to see what TSM Academy can do over in Proving Grounds and going further into UGP.
So we talked enough about the matchup ourselves. Let's look at the matchup and actually look at one of the replays that we have from earlier on in that game, because there was a lot happening on the top half of the map. Yes, there's a couple solo kills that happened as well, but one in particular of one of these earlier game dives that happened from TSM's side. So I'll break this one down for me. What was TSM's prep like here, and how'd they pull this off?
Yeah, so they know that Hybrids has to back off of the wave because Hanser has just been getting so much priority. We were looking at Babip's early pathing, and he starts down in bot side. We had a couple of questions as to what exactly the plan here was, but it seems like the whole plan was just bully Hybrids out of the game. They must have identified after game one that Hybrids is the weak link to go after in this team, and I mean, there's not much to say here. Hanser, it turns out that diving Hybrids, pretty good. And they got so much gold off of this, they're able to then continue to snowball that for Hanser, and I mean, they basically took away another quadrant that I think Frostforce would have liked to have farmed.
Yeah, and Hansu just got such a massive lead. Two games in a row now. He was the beneficiary of multiple kills throughout that, and that just let the TSM Academy, again, have such a massive lead in those mid-game team fights. But this time around, Winthrop weren't really fighting back as hard as we saw in that game number 1. They didn't have that many opportunities. So, Tim, as we take a look at this next replay, fast-forwarding very far into the game, this is around the 21.5-minute mark where we have a team fight around that mid lane. And, again, TSM just kind of run through with it.
Yeah, this was a TSM comp where the only real engage tool they had was Lilia, right? And so Hanser sets it up here with the gangplank to slow everybody down. Babip goes in, sets off a sleep. He flashes in for it, and Cody's son and Hanser both go in, lay their damage out. I mean, this is you can't really criticize a comp for not having too much engage when they go and do that. So they made really good use of it. Hanser was so fad. Cody's son had some big pops. He had a quadra kill later with a big cash in on that fight that it actually started off kind of poorly, but it just went to show how far ahead TSM were at that point. And yeah, the advantages they had were just too much to overcome.
Yeah, TSM Academy, after that play, they were never in a position really where it looked dicey. Every moment after that, they just kept pushing, kept winning these fights over and over again. But now let's take a look at the Winthrop side again, because they lost the series 2-0, and they are now knocked out of the UGP. They still have more Tier 1 tournaments to play in. So, Alec, I want to throw this to you because there's been a conversation around the amateur scene for a while. What's better, amateur or collegiate? Amateur or collegiate? For a while, a couple years ago, I remember back when I was first starting off casting, it was like, oh, collegiate's awesome. They're so good. And then there was a time where amateur took over. But Winthrop got pretty far in here. We saw them get actually further than Maryville did, who usually are the top dogs in collegiate. So what do you think this means for collegiate organizations, and specifically the conversation around who's the best collegiate team right now?
Now for collegiate, I'd still say that I think Maryville have a lot of experience behind their back, and their organization just as a whole have done really great job of curating really great talent. And for Winthrop, I think that they had I would say they definitely performed much better than a lot of people would have expected. I will also say that for collegiate, the kind of mix between doing collegiate programming and doing all of their kind of getting their classes and all of that is going to be very difficult when you have basically playing almost 7 days a week for Proving Grounds. That is very discouraging, I think, for a lot of collegiate teams. And the fact that I think that Winthrop were able to perform in almost every single Tier 2 as well as this Tier 1 event kind of just proves their dedication, and that, hey, this team is willing to kind of play all around the clock just to get that a little bit of edge, try to just prove and get their players out onto the map, get that practice. And here we go. It's starting to show off finally. They're kind of rising up, and we'll see them in Wisdom in 2 weeks.
So my next follow-up question for you then is, are you willing to place a bet right now on which collegiate team will make it into Proving Ground Circuit, if one does? Is it Maryville? Is it Winthrop? Is it both?
So there's 6 slots left, right? You've got 6 slots. You've got 4 from Wisdom, 2 from the last one from NSG. I think... Okay, what is your bet? What is it? What exactly are we wagering, and who are you betting on?
I wasn't thinking of actual wager. My usual is to bet facial hair. Should I just bet my mustache on it again? That's a plan. I've been thinking about shaving
Sure,
this
I mean,
for
there's
a
not
while.
much anywhere else, so I mean, sure.
Exactly, right, yeah. All right, I'll bet my mustache that, I don't know, Winthrop make it in before Maryville. Will you take that bet? And if Maryville make it in...
Maybe you should reconsider.
Maybe I should.
If you don't have a really confident prediction on this one, are you sure you want to throw that out there?
See, Tim has never worked with me on a desk before. He doesn't realize I bet my facial hair on anything, really.
Yes,
basically. Both of those collegiate programs, both Maryville and Winthrop, I think have different strengths, and I think a lot of it depends on what their matchups end up being in the tournaments. How the bracket shakes out for them. I think TSM showed today that if you can make the games all about the top lane, and you've got someone as good as Hanser, and there are some other top laners in Amateur who could do similar. I think, like, if you put Viper up there, he could do the same kind of thing. But if you end up against a team that is more mid-focused, and that Doxa can kind of exert himself more and have a larger presence in the game, maybe that works out better for them. Maryville is another team with a very strong top laner who loves to play through that. So if they go head-to-head, I'd probably lean Maryville a little bit. But if you can make the game, if you end up in a matchup that is more about the bottom half of the map, more about the mid lane head-to-head, I think Winthrop have a pretty good chance still. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them make it through in the end.
All right, thank you for that breakdown, Tim. But I'm still waiting to hear what Alex wagering right now.
Oh my God! Okay,
I haven't heard what the other side of this bet is.
Maryville. Okay, Winthrop don't make PG, right? Winthrop don't
You
make
don't
PG,
think? Okay,
and
all right.
Maryville will either slide in through NSG or just barely make top 4 in Wisdom.
Okay, so if Maryville don't make it, then it's a wash. But if they make it and Winthrop don't, then I lose. If Winthrop make it and Maryville don't,
This bet sucks, man. We're gonna have to talk about
this
this.
is a terrible
off air,
bet.
man. This
We'll
bet
talk
is
about it off air.
awful.
We'll update everyone on how things are going. But that's going to be it for match number 1, rather. Coming up next, though, we got more action as No Org look to take down CLG Academy. We're going to send it to a break before we get into that one. But that's going to be another really exciting matchup. Cannot wait for that one to start. So don't go anywhere. Hang tight. We'll be back shortly.